Remember to like and subscribe for more health tips. Let us know in the comments how often you shower or if you plan to change your routine after hearing these insights. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.
It can be tough when it feels like people around you are becoming more distant, and it's understandable to worry that it might be something personal. As we age, our relationships and emotional well-being can change, sometimes in subtle ways that we don't immediately notice. It's important to recognize that the challenges of aging don't just affect physical health. They can also impact how we interact with others and how others perceive us. But don't worry. Being aware of these shifts is the first step toward making meaningful changes. Let's dive into 7 surprising reasons why people might seem distant or treat you differently as you age, and most importantly, how you can address them to nurture your relationships and your emotional well-being. Reason number 1. Becoming too negative. It's totally normal to feel frustrated or overwhelmed by the challenges that come with aging, whether it's physical changes, societal shifts, or just the way things used to be. But when the focus of every conversation shifts to complaints, it can unknowingly drain the energy of those around you. Constant negativity can create a barrier, and even loved ones who care deeply might start to distance themselves. Let's consider George's situation. He was once a beloved grandfather, eagerly anticipating visits from his grandkids. But as time passed, his outlook became more negative. Instead of celebrating the joys of family, his conversations turned to complaints about his health, music he didn't enjoy, and frustration with younger generations. His grandchildren, once excited to visit, began to make excuses to avoid him. They didn't hate George. They just dreaded the long, drawn-out rants. The reality is that people are naturally drawn to those who uplift and energize them. If your conversations are consistently negative, others may start associating those interactions with stress or discomfort. No one wants every visit to feel emotionally draining. So how can we turn this around? Gratitude is the key. Shifting the focus of conversation from complaints to appreciation can make a huge difference. Instead of focusing on what's going wrong, try focusing on what's going right. Here are a few examples of how to reframe the conversation. Instead of saying, "Kids these days don't have any manners," try, "It's amazing how tech-savvy young people are." Instead of saying, "My back hurts all the time," try, "I'm so grateful I can still take walks every morning." This simple shift in perspective can help change the energy of your conversations and make you more enjoyable to be around. Not only will it strengthen your relationships, but it'll also improve your own well-being. Studies have shown that practicing gratitude reduces stress, improves mood, and builds stronger social connections. If George had chosen to focus on the joy of spending time with his grandkids, rather than fixating on his frustrations, he may have preserved those precious relationships. So, the next time you feel tempted to complain, pause and think, what's one positive thing I can share instead? By choosing gratitude over negativity, you'll not only create more meaningful interactions, but also bring more peace and happiness into your life. Reason number 2. Being overly opinionated and stubborn as we age. It's natural to accumulate decades of life experiences and wisdom. After all, you've lived through a lot and likely learned valuable lessons along the way. It can be tempting to share that knowledge, especially with younger generations, but when advice crosses into insistence and personal beliefs become rigid, it can create frustration and distance. Take Margaret, for example. She loved her family deeply and wanted what was best for them, but she held very strong opinions about how things should be done. When her son and daughter-in-law decided to raise their children in a more modern way, encouraging emotional expression and adopting a less strict discipline style, Margaret couldn't contain her criticism. She constantly insisted that kids these days are too soft, and that back in my day, we did things the right way. What started as advice soon became relentless judgment. Every family gathering turned into a debate, and over time, Margaret's son and his wife started visiting less. Not because they didn't love her, but because they dreaded the arguments. The thing about being overly opinionated is that it leaves little room for discussion. It often turns into a battle of wills, where no one's views are fully heard or understood. When people feel that their choices are constantly being corrected or dismissed, it creates an emotional barrier. They become hesitant to engage in deeper conversations, fearing criticism or judgment. This distance can weaken relationships and leave people feeling misunderstood or disrespected. So, what's the solution? Listen more, argue less. Instead of insisting on being right, try to be curious. If you disagree with someone's approach, ask questions instead of making statements. For example, "That's interesting. What made you decide to do it that way? Tell me more about why that works for you." This approach shows that you respect their perspective and are open to understanding their choices. When people feel heard and respected, they're more likely to stay engaged in conversation rather than withdrawing. Margaret eventually realized that while she didn't agree with her son's parenting style, respecting his choices was more important than proving a point. Once she stopped criticizing and started listening, family gatherings became warm and enjoyable again. Sometimes, the best way to stay close to those you love is to accept that different doesn't mean wrong. It just means different. By letting go of the need to always be right, you'll not only improve your relationships, but also foster a deeper sense of connection with those around you. Reason number 3, acting entitled to respect without giving it. As we age, it's common to feel that respect should naturally come with the territory. After all, we've lived longer, gained more experience, and have accumulated a wealth of wisdom over the years. But while age certainly deserves recognition, true respect is a two-way street. When older individuals expect admiration and deference from others but treat younger generations with condescension or dismissiveness, it leads to resentment and disconnection. Respect isn't something you can simply demand. It's earned through your actions and how you treat others. Take Mr. Thompson, for example. A retired schoolteacher who had spent decades shaping young minds, Mr. Thompson was well respected during his teaching years. But after retirement, he continued to carry that sense of authority into his personal life. He expected admiration from everyone he met, interrupting younger people mid-sentence, dismissing their opinions as nonsense, and frequently saying things like, "Kids these days don't know anything." In his mind, he was offering the wisdom he had gained over a lifetime, but in reality, his attitude made others feel small. Over time, his neighbors and even his own family began keeping their distance. It wasn't that they didn't respect his experience. It was because he wasn't respecting theirs. The truth is that respect isn't automatic, and it's not something you're entitled to just because you've lived longer. Respect is reciprocal. When older people belittle younger generations, it creates a divide rather than a connection. No one, regardless of their age, likes to feel talked down to or ignored. Yes, younger people might not have the same life experience, but they offer fresh perspectives, new ideas, and different kinds of wisdom. Dismissing them outright only fosters bitterness and creates a barrier between generations. So, what's the solution? Give respect to receive respect. Instead of lecturing, try engaging in meaningful conversations. Ask younger people about their interests, listen to their experiences, and acknowledge their knowledge. For example, "That's interesting. Tell me more. I see what you mean. What led you to think that way?" A simple shift in attitude can turn interactions from frustrating to fulfilling. When Mr. Thompson finally realized that respect goes both ways, things changed. He started listening more, offering wisdom only when it was welcomed, and showing genuine appreciation for others' perspectives. As a result, people began seeking out his company again, not out of obligation, but because they genuinely enjoyed being around him. The more respect you give, the more you receive. Reason number 4, gossiping too much. We all enjoy a little conversation about what's going on in our community. But when casual chatter turns into constant gossip, it can become toxic. Talking behind people's backs not only creates distrust, but it also damages relationships and makes others hesitant to open up. No one wants to be around someone who might turn their personal struggles into the next topic of conversation. As we grow older, it's important to ask ourselves, are we strengthening relationships, or are we breaking them apart with unnecessary rumors? Take Linda, for example. A friendly woman in her 70s, Linda was always in the know. She loved sharing news about neighbors, family members, and even acquaintances at church. At first, people enjoyed her lively storytelling and found her entertaining. But over time, they began to realize that Linda wasn't just sharing harmless updates. She was spreading private matters, often with her own negative spin. Friends who once confided in her started to hold back, fearing their words would be twisted and shared with others. One by one, her friendships faded, and Linda couldn't understand why people were avoiding her. The problem with gossip is that it erodes trust. When people see you talking about others behind their backs, they naturally assume you'll do the same to them. This leads to people keeping their distance, creating isolation and loneliness. While gossip may seem entertaining in the moment, it often leaves behind hurt feelings and damaged relationships that can be difficult to repair. So, how do you fix this? Shift your focus to meaningful discussions instead of drama. Instead of talking about people, talk about ideas, experiences, and personal growth. Ask others about their dreams, thoughts on life, or even their favorite books and movies. If someone tries to pull you into gossip, redirect the conversation by saying, "I'd rather not talk about them. How have you been doing?" When people see that you're someone who values kindness over rumors, they'll feel more comfortable and respected in your presence. Linda eventually realized that her words were pushing people away rather than bringing them closer. She made a conscious effort to listen more and talk less about others. Over time, trust was rebuilt, and friendships that had once grown distant began to flourish again. Remember, being known as someone who spreads positivity is far better than being remembered as someone who spreads gossip. Reason number 5. Not taking care of personal hygiene as we age. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that personal appearance no longer matters. After all, retirement often means fewer social obligations, and comfort becomes a priority. But the truth is, neglecting hygiene and grooming can subtly push people away, often without them even saying a word. An unkempt appearance, bad breath, or body odor can make interactions uncomfortable, no matter how much people may care about you. Take Henry, for example, a friendly man in his late 70s who loved attending community events. He was full of stories and wisdom, but over time, people started avoiding sitting next to him. He didn't notice it at first, but his lack of regular showers, overgrown nails, and old, stained clothes made others uncomfortable. Friends who once engaged in long conversations began making excuses to leave early, and at family gatherings, his grandchildren hesitated to hug him. It wasn't that they didn't love him, but they felt uneasy being around him. Many older adults don't realize how much hygiene affects social interactions. Sometimes, declining physical ability or a lack of motivation leads to neglecting basic self-care. But when people notice an ongoing pattern of poor grooming, they may subconsciously associate it with a lack of self-respect, which makes it harder to connect. No one expects perfection, but basic cleanliness shows that you value yourself and those around you. So what's the solution? Prioritize self-care and hygiene to maintain strong social connections. Simple habits like regular showers, clean clothes, trimmed nails, and fresh breath make a huge difference. If mobility or health issues make grooming difficult, seeking help from family, caregivers, or even using hygiene-friendly tools can make things easier. Looking presentable isn't about vanity. It's about self-respect and making others feel comfortable in your presence. Eventually, Henry made a change. After his sister gently pointed out how his hygiene was affecting his relationships, he took her advice to heart. He started taking better care of himself, got a fresh haircut, and paid more attention to his appearance. Slowly, the distance between him and his friends disappeared. People were more eager to talk with him again, and his family once more embraced him warmly. Caring for yourself shows others that you care about them too. Reason number 6. Always talking about illness and death. It's natural for health to become a bigger concern as we age. Aches, pains, doctor visits, and medications are part of daily life. However, constantly talking about illness, medical problems, and even death can make conversations feel heavy and draining. While it's important to share concerns with close friends and family, turning every discussion into a health report can push people away. Take Margaret, for example, a lively woman in her 70s who loved hosting afternoon tea with her longtime friends. At first, their gatherings were filled with laughter and shared memories, but over time, Margaret's conversations became dominated by her latest doctor visits, medications, and fears about getting older. Every time her friends tried to steer the conversation towards something fun, Margaret would circle back to her ailments. Slowly, her friends stopped coming around as often. They still cared about her, but they left feeling emotionally exhausted rather than uplifted. The truth is, no one wants to be constantly reminded of aging and mortality. While friends and family understand that health issues are a reality, they also want to enjoy time together without feeling like every conversation is a medical consultation. Dwelling too much on illness and death can make people anxious or even helpless, especially when they don't know how to respond. Instead of bringing people closer, it often creates emotional distance. So, what's the solution? Balance conversations with lighter topics. It's perfectly okay to share health concerns when needed, but make sure to also talk about positive experiences, hobbies, and interesting stories. Ask others about their lives, their passions, and their plans. If you find yourself steering the discussion back to health, pause and redirect the topic to something uplifting. Engaging in joyful conversations not only keeps relationships strong, but also improves your own mindset and well-being. Eventually, Margaret realized what was happening. Instead of letting illness define her social interactions, she made an effort to focus on the good things in life. She started talking about books she was reading, places she wanted to visit, and fond memories from her youth. Slowly, her friends started coming around more often, and their gatherings became enjoyable once again. A little positivity goes a long way in keeping relationships strong. Reason number 7. Rejecting modern ways and technology. The world is changing faster than ever, and technology has become a big part of how people communicate and stay connected. However, some older adults refuse to adapt, dismissing modern ways as unnecessary or too complicated. While it's understandable that learning new technology can feel overwhelming, completely rejecting it can make someone seem out of touch and difficult to relate to, especially to younger generations. Take Robert, for example, a loving grandfather who adored his family. His children and grandchildren lived in different cities and often invited him to join video calls so he wouldn't miss important moments. But Robert always refused, insisting that real conversations should happen in person and that he didn't need all that tech nonsense. Over time, he missed birthdays, holiday celebrations, and even his granddaughter's graduation, all because he wouldn't adapt. His family still loved him, but they eventually stopped trying to include him in virtual gatherings, and Robert found himself feeling lonelier than ever. The truth is, resisting modern ways can create an unnecessary gap between generations. Younger people rely on technology for work, entertainment, and social interactions. If an older person constantly criticizes or refuses to engage with these new ways, it can make younger family members and friends feel like they have little in common with them. This can lead to fewer conversations and fewer opportunities to bond. So, what's the solution? Embrace small changes to stay connected. No one is asking you to become a tech expert, but learning simple things like how to send a text, join a video call, or use voice commands can make a huge difference. If you struggle with technology, ask a family member for help. They'll likely be happy to teach you. In the process, you'll create new opportunities for connection. The key is to approach change with an open mind rather than immediate resistance. Eventually, Robert had a change of heart. With his grandson's help, he learned how to make video calls, send voice messages, and even browse photos online. He was amazed at how much he had been missing out on. Suddenly, he was able to see his grandchildren's faces, join family celebrations from afar, and stay involved in their lives in ways he never imagined. A willingness to adapt doesn't just keep you connected. It keeps you relevant and deeply involved in the lives of those you love. As we age, it's easy to unknowingly adopt habits that can push people away. But with a little self-awareness and effort, we can maintain meaningful connections. Whether it's staying positive, embracing technology, or being mindful of how we interact, small changes can make a big difference in our relationships. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, let us know by commenting a 9 or Z down below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Take care, and see you in the next video.